We usually see that believers defend their belief system very vigorously. They could not see the obvious issues and contradictions in the religious teaching and sacred text. Here, we will attempt to analyze the question, why do believers cling so tightly to their faith, even when faced with contradictions or moral discomfort? We will tackle this topic from two perspectives. Firstly, how the brain actually functions, and secondly, how a child's upbringing in a believer's environment can influence their thought process. Before we delve into the complexities of religion and the paradox of liberal believers, who claim to objectively analyze their faith while simultaneously adhering to traditions without scrutiny, we must first understand a more fundamental issue: the way our brain manipulates our perception and understanding of reality. This manipulation is not malicious or intentional in the way we typically think of deception. Instead, it is a deeply ingrained cognitive process, one that has evolved to help us navigate an overwhelming world of sensory input, social complexity, and existential uncertainty. This may be the most critical discussion in the book, an inquiry into why followers often struggle to detect contradictions, falsehoods, and inconsistencies within their own faith, religious texts, and spiritual authorities. Paradoxically, the same individuals can dissect other belief systems with striking logic and clarity, exposing flaws with ease. Why does our perception become so selective, our eyes and minds seemingly locked, when it comes to the religion we follow? In recent years, this concept has become easier to discuss and more widely accepted, mainly because its application is now evident in the digital world. Social media platforms like Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram have built entire ecosystems around the principle of cognitive reinforcement. These platforms track what we watch, what we click, and what we linger on. And then they feed us more of the same. The algorithms are designed not to challenge us, but to comfort us with familiarity. They reinforce our existing preferences, beliefs, and biases, creating echo chambers that appear to be objective reality but are, in fact, highly curated illusions. This phenomenon is not limited to digital media. It reflects how our brain has always functioned. Every moment of our lives we are bombarded with sensory information, sights, sounds, smells, textures, and tastes. But what we perceive is not direct feed from our sensory organs. Our eyes, ears, nose, and skin are merely conduits. The real processing happens in the brain, which receives these signals and then interprets them, based on prior experience, learned knowledge, emotional state, and subconscious bias. In this process, the brain performs several critical functions. It filters out information and deems it irrelevant or unimportant. It prioritizes stimuli that align with our current goals, fears, or desires. It fills in gaps in perception with assumptions based on past experiences. It reconstructs reality in a way that feels coherent and meaningful to us. This is why neuroscientists and psychologists often say, we do not see with our eyes, we see through our brain.
Our perception is not a mirror of the external world. It is a constructed narrative, shaped by countless internal factors. Religion does not just shape belief, it hijacks perception. One of the most famous demonstrations of this principle is the invisible gorilla experiment popularized by a BBC documentary. In the experiment, participants are asked to watch a video of people passing basketballs and count the number of passes. In the middle of the video, a person in a gorilla suit walks through the scene. Beats their chest, and exits. Astonishingly, a significant portion of viewers fail to notice the gorilla at all. Their brain, focused on the task of counting passes, filters out the unexpected and irrelevant stimulus, even one as absurd and conspicuous as a gorilla. This exact filtering mechanism applies not only to sensory perception, but also to cognitive understanding. When we read a book, listen to a lecture, or engage in a conversation, our brain is not passively absorbing information, it is actively evaluating, prioritizing, and, crucially, editing what we take in. If we have been conditioned to believe that a particular source is authoritative or sacred, our brain will often suppress critical analysis of that source. It will minimize doubt, reduce scrutiny, and amplify acceptance. This is especially evident in religious contexts. A Christian reading the Bible or listening to a sermon from a respected priest may find it difficult to question the content, not because the ideas are flawless, but because the brain has been trained to treat them as such. Similarly, a Muslim reading the Quran or attending an Islamic lecture may experience a cognitive barrier to skepticism, even if they consider themselves liberal or open-minded. The reverence for the source creates a mental shortcut. This is true because it comes from a trusted authority. This phenomenon is not limited to religion. It applies to politics, education, relationships, and even personal identity. But religion presents a particularly potent example. Because it often involves deep emotional investment, community reinforcement, and existential significance. The stakes are higher, and the conditioning is stronger. What complicates matters further is that the brain's manipulation is individualized. Each person's cognitive filters are shaped by their unique life experiences, cultural background, emotional history, and belief system. So while one person may interpret a religious text as metaphorical and symbolic, another may see it as literal and prescriptive, even if both consider themselves liberal thinkers. The spectrum of belief is not just external, it is internal, and it varies dramatically from one mind to another. Our brain is not a seeker of truth, it is a loyal servant to our narrative. This leads to a fascinating paradox. A person may genuinely believe they are analyzing their faith objectively, applying reason and critical thought, but their brain may still be operating within a framework of assumptions and biases that they are unaware of. They may be liberal in their social views, progressive in their politics, and open-minded in their interactions, yet still hold deeply traditional religious beliefs that they have never truly questioned. And when confronted with contradictions or challenges, their brain may instinctively defend those beliefs.
May Shokobiten and Josh the Stack and Dem in know your oi and Jackshire we can see Gao bracing gags notice ignorance but out of cognitive habit.
In essence, our brain is expertly deceiving us. It's not just filtering reality, it's reshaping it to align with what we've been conditioned to believe. It blocks inconvenient thoughts, suppresses contradictions, and even manipulates your senses to deliver a version of truth that feels comfortable. We don't see what's there, we see what we are trained to see. We don't hear what's said, we hear what aligns with our expectations, and we don't understand what's real. We understand what reinforces our belief system. This isn't just bias, it's neurological self-preservation. The mind protects its narrative at all costs, even if that means distorting reality itself. It is essential to recognize that this is not a flaw or a failure. It is a feature of human cognition. Our brains are designed to create stability, coherence, and a sense of meaning. They resist chaos and ambiguity. They seek patterns and narratives, and in doing so, they often sacrifice objectivity for the sake of comfort. This understanding has deep implications for how we engage with religion, belief, and our own identities. It suggests that true objectivity is not a destination, but a process. One that requires constant self-awareness, humility, and willingness to challenge our own assumptions. It also means that we must be cautious when judging others, what appears to be blind faith or irrational tradition. May, in fact, be the result of a deeply personal cognitive framework that we do not fully understand. For example, a Muslim who considers themselves liberal may still adhere to practices or beliefs that seem rigid or conservative to others. This does not necessarily mean they are hypocritical or confused. It may simply reflect the way their brain has reconciled different aspects of their identity. Similarly, a Christian who embraces progressive values may still hold traditional views on scripture or morality, not out of dogma, but rather due to cognitive alignment with their upbringing and emotional experiences. In this light, the conversation about religion and liberalism becomes less about contradiction and more about complexity. It becomes a dialogue not just between beliefs, but between brains, each with its own filters, biases, and narratives. So before we debate religious followers questioning their mindlessly adhering to tradition, we must first examine the architecture of both minds. We must ask, what assumptions are we making? What sources do we trust without question? What beliefs have we inherited rather than chosen? And how might our brain be shaping our perception in ways we do not even realize? Only by engaging in this introspective process can we begin to approach accurate understanding of ourselves, of others, and of the intricate dance between faith and cognition.
Now, moving on to the second aspect of this discussion, how the upbringing of a child in a believer's environment brainwashes them. Many believers, even those who pride themselves on being open-minded, often hold firmly to the belief that it is their sacred duty to pass on their faith to their children. This conviction is deeply embedded in religious teachings and reinforced by religious authorities, priests, imams, rabbis, as well as societal norms. Within many communities, this transmission of faith is seen not just as tradition but as a moral obligation. Parents who fail to instill religious beliefs in their children are frequently judged as irresponsible or neglectful, as though they've failed in one of the most fundamental aspects of parenting. This pressure is not merely external, it is internalized by parents, who genuinely believe they are acting in their children's best interest. From a young age, children are exposed to religious rituals and practices, often not through explanation, but through observation. A child watches their parents pray, fast, attend religious services, and celebrate religious holidays. These rituals become part of the child's environment, absorbed passively but powerfully. The child sees these actions performed by the people they trust most, their parents, and naturally assumes their validity. What makes this process even more potent is the reinforcement that often accompanies it. Children are praised for participating in religious rituals, and may be rewarded for memorizing prayers or attending services. This creates a feedback loop. Religious behavior is not only modeled, but incentivized. By the time a child reaches an age where they can begin to think critically, their worldview has already been shaped by years of unexamined exposure. The beliefs and rituals have become deeply ingrained, making it difficult, if not impossible, for the child to question them without emotional or social consequences. As Mr. Javed Akhtar once pointed out in a public debate, parents will ask their children what profession they wish to pursue, offering guidance and support. Yet, when it comes to religion, that same freedom of choice is rarely extended by even the most liberal parents. Children are not given the Quran, the Bible, the Rig Veda, or other sacred texts and encouraged to explore and decide for themselves. Instead, they are handed a belief system and expected to accept it without question. This raises a critical question about the role of parenthood. Is it truly responsible to impose a belief system on a child before they are capable of understanding or evaluating it? Or is true parental responsibility found in nurturing a child's ability to think independently, to question, and to choose? Encouraging children to explore different philosophies, spiritual paths, or even secular viewpoints does not mean abandoning moral guidance. It means trusting them to arrive at their own conclusions. Offering a teenager the freedom to explore different faiths and choose the one that is the best and most appropriate for them. Granting this freedom after years of nurturing a particular religion in their minds is akin to asking an architect to redesign a building structure after the foundation has already been poured. The core framework, the emotional, cultural, and psychological groundwork has already been shaped, making true objectivity nearly impossible. To support the true freedom and option for our children, they should be brought up with ethical values and the ability to think critically and question, while providing exposure to other faiths and reinforcing that they have to make a decision later.
It's their choice, and in a way, a test of whether the religion is genuinely true.